Part of my big philosophy is portraits or any kind of photography, you need two main ingredients, very, very important. You need a good background with depth and dimension, and then you need good quality of light at the same time, same place. And when those two things exist together, then somebody, in my case, because I'm photographing people, can enter that scene and exist, and then I photograph them. That way we don't have to orchestrate or pose to death, because the lighting is already good, the background is already good, you already have the potential for composition, and they can be themselves.
Hey, Raymond here from the Beginner Photography Podcast, and today we have part 3 of our 3-part Imaging USA series of interviews. So if you don't know, if you haven't been listening for the past 2 weeks, I went down to Imaging USA, which is the biggest photography, I'm pretty sure that it's the biggest photography convention in the country. More than 10,000 other photographers show up for 3 days. This year it was in Louisville, for just a great time to be able to connect and learn from other industry professionals in the world of photography. And it leaves you feeling so excited and energized for the future of photography. So whatever it is that you're struggling with, that all is gone, because you're able to open up and just have these conversations while you're there with other photographers who I promise you have gone through the exact same thing. So I took this opportunity, knowing that all of these photographers would be in the same place at once, to connect with past guests of the podcast, as well as find some new photography friends. And these will be people who are future past guests of the podcast as well. So one of the first people who I reached out to, because, in fact, I got a story. It is Seth Miranda. Now, I had Seth Miranda back on the podcast back in 2020. And this was right at the start of COVID. And I had met him at Imaging right before really COVID took off or anything. I don't even think that we had a single conversation about COVID at that time. I hadn't been a part of his ecosystem, I think because I was so really focused on weddings and trying to get it done. And I think deep down I knew that weddings were getting harder and harder for me. I was just kind of losing that enjoyment. So I decided to go deeper and deeper into them for a while. And I really wasn't exploring the world of other areas of photography. And Seth, I think he's most well known for his portrait work in the world of makeup. So a lot of tutorials that you may see of Seth's on YouTube, which he's all over YouTube when it comes to the world of photography, especially doing a lot of work with Adorama as far as camera reviews, as far as lighting techniques and tutorials. He's always out there trying to share some information. So I reach out to Seth and I say, hey, would you be interested? I know that you'll be at Imaging. So will I. I would love to connect with you to chat for the podcast for a few minutes. And he's like, absolutely. I have no idea where I'm going to be at any one time. So here's my number. Just give me a call and we will connect. And I was like, sounds great. So I drive down Sunday morning, actually. But by the time I check into my hotel room and get over to the conference, there's a lot going on at a convention like this. There's so many people. You got to register. There's escalators. It's a big convention center. You finally get in the door of the expo center and you're just like, whoa, this is massive. And I already had a time set up with another photographer who I had to go meet with real quick because I didn't want to be late for that. So after that conversation that I had with them, now I realize, I tried to book these interviews an hour apart, but it only took 10, 12, 15 minutes. So now I have 45 minutes to kill until the next interview. So again, as I had said last week and the week before, at Imaging USA, you might just turn a corner and be like, oh, wow, there's a photographer who I've seen a billion times on YouTube, or who I know very well from a podcast or something like that. And sure enough, there was Seth Miranda, who was setting up lights for another photographer. And I thought, what is happening here? So I walk up and I'm like, hey, Seth, what's up? And he's like, hey, Raymond, it's great to see you. So glad that that this happened organically. So we just get to chatting, and he has got to be one of the busiest dudes at this entire thing. And in fact, I have another story for right after this, but we'll go ahead and get on into this interview first, because Seth really has a lot to share. And I think people may see him as very opinionated, but that's not a bad thing. Seth knows what he likes. He knows what works for him, and that's what he shares. He's not one of those people who's going to be like, yeah, it could work like this, it could work like that. I've never done this, I've never done that, but yeah, it could work. He's going to tell you what he does. He's going to tell you how he does it. and he's going to show you, not just tell you, he's going to show you. And if you want to use it, then great. But he is the least BS person I've ever met in my entire life, which oftentimes is very much a breath of fresh air. So with that, let's go ahead and hear first from Seth Miranda.
My name's Seth Miranda. I'm probably 25 years deep, as crazy as that sounds. I shoot editorial, portrait, commercial, but I'm probably known mostly for like the special effects, alien creature, zombie horror stuff, and shutter drag for some reason. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
People have a hard time with the shutter drag.
That woman that while you were doing the last interview, that's what she came up to. She's like, I was at your class for shutter drag 2 years ago, and I'm trying to do it with dogs now. How do I do this?
Oh, wow.
Every day I get somebody asking me about shutter drag, and I get it. It became a trend, and it's something that I don't think people realize they can have control over if they really understand light. And then once they understand that, they're like, well, what else can I do? And what other things are possible? And people are always just trying to make their images look somehow special, more special than the last time.
Yeah.
And it's a really drastic thing that can do that. And especially all the videos on Adorama, I end up throwing shutter drag through something somewhere at some point. And I don't know why.
You're just the guy now.
I just keep leaning back on it because I'm like, I could try a drag on this. Let's do it, you know? It's like, hey, it's like you if you're a chef, you're like, let's try it with cheese. You know, like that's kind of what it is.
That's hilarious. Well, then this one might be tough because you're kind of known as shooting these very creative portraits with shutter drag, but I'm sure that there's times where you find yourself in a creative rut. How do you get out of that?
I kind of always say the same thing. There's a few things. One, be around people that make you want to go do things and inspire you from what they're doing, and you're like, why aren't I doing that? And then kind of get competitive and hate life and go after it. The other thing I would say is get into other things that are creative that aren't what you do. So instead of shooting photography, Scorsese always makes me want to go shoot. Every time I see those dice roll in Casino, I'm like, I got to go do something. Every time Billy Bats opens his mouth, I got to go do something. But the real thing that no matter what fail-safe for me is, absolutely pick up your camera, just go shoot, and do it the way you wouldn't do it. You always shoot wide angles, now you're using a 200 millimeter. Oh, you always shoot color? Now you're only doing black and white for the next 2-3 months. Do not do the things you always do because you're leaning on it, you're crutching on it. Make your brain think differently. And when you start doing that, you force yourself into a creative place of getting yourself into a comfort zone in a place you weren't comfortable for, and you'll realize just how creative you've been without actually meaning to.
So you said, like, if you shoot color, shoot black and white for 2 or 3 months. This isn't you go out with one roll of film or you do it for an afternoon and see if you like it or not. This is like, put in the work.
No, it's a discipline. And I always call what we do a discipline because it really is, especially if you're going to stick to a genre and work at it and work at it and work at it. It's the same as any other art form. And I think it's a muscle. And I got to tell you, even here at Imaging, before I came here, I was like, I haven't done a demo in like forever. I don't know if I should do this. And then they give you a big platform, and you're like, let me book a small demo at Adorama to shake some rust off. And then before that demo, you're like, let me shoot the mannequin in the studio for an afternoon, And you start realizing it's a muscle, and you don't want to end up sore after it, and you want to feel good about it, and I want to have a good demo. I want to make people feel like they were worth their time is so precious in a place like this. They go to any other class. I don't want them to come to my class and be like the guy that got that review of he kinda nah. No, I want them to be like, whoa.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't learn anything, I want you to have so much fire in your veins that you're like, I gotta go shoot something before the day's out. If I can make you feel like you not only can shoot but want to shoot, I did it.
I feel like you're that guy. You do that. You can do that for sure. Yeah. You work with people, right? You photograph people in front of the camera. What tips do you have for getting emotion out of your subjects?
I think people forget that the most important part about a portrait is the person that you're trying to get portrayed in that image. And I think people are really quickly to grab gear, sling it around, throw setups around, shoot, look. There's a human sitting there. Like, what are you doing? And I think the best portrait photographers are the ones that realize that they got to connect for a second. Even if you only have 10 minutes with them, find a common ground before you start doing anything technical. And I think the discipline part of it is to get enough in your Rolodex of tricks that it only takes you 2 minutes to do the technical, but it takes you 8 minutes to connect. And then that 10 minutes is more successful every time. And I learned a lot of that from all the other, you get stuck on the technical, but I learned a lot of that from all the amazing portrait photographers. I got to tell you, I share a studio with Daniel, and when you watch the way he shoots, that's priority one, is making the jokes, talking about something they're wearing. Hey, how long did it take you to get here today? The traffic was crazy, and their guards drop. And then you're less of in an area of like, or anxiety, and you start seeing that X factor of a portrait that everyone tries to strive for. because they're there with you in the portrait. They're not getting photos shot at them. They're with you.
Yeah. It's such a hard thing, I think, for new photographers, because you're so focused on the gear, like you guys were saying, that you're just not looking at the person in front of the camera.
You do workshops with hands-on, and it's almost like the model's not even there. It's like you realize that's a human, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking to me, you're moving things. And make sure, check in. Hey, did you get some water? You good?
Yeah.
Is there something you want to go?
They're humans.
Yeah, and if you are not creating a portrait to portray the person, what are you shooting? You're just getting that, 45-degree light, and yay, TTL, hurrah.
Yeah.
No, even if the lighting isn't good, if you get the moment, you get that connection, you get that special extra, it doesn't matter about everything else. The portrait's successful.
Perfect. Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think is more important, the technical or the emotional? But I think you pretty much just answered it right there.
I guess, I just wouldn't say the technical isn't not important, because you're going to get to a place where you're trying to achieve a look, something in your head, and that's where the right or wrong answers come from. It's not about the feel, the emotion, the look, the creative. This is as much a feel as it is a science. You can learn the technical, you can learn the physics, you can learn the science. Lighting's predictable. Light is predictable. We know what it's going to do. But if you're telling me I want it to look like this, and it's not looking like that, then we got a discussion. But if you don't care and you're going towards something else, it's allowed to be a little more organic. You're allowed to breathe a little bit. I just think, especially a place like this where you see the same image after the same image, then people try to replicate that instead of doing their shot. I think that's when people get upset with their work. It's not their work. They're just replicating. They're just emulating. It's lifeless. There's no soul.
Yeah, that's never any fun.
I mean, I kind of like it when I'm shooting the dead stuff, but like no catch lights and just a vacant stare and cold skin. I mean, you can't beat it.
What do you think new photographers spend too much time obsessing over?
I think they obsess with getting stuck on not knowing what they're looking for. They look at the shot and they go, is this right? Am I doing this? Is that what it's supposed to be? Hold on. Why don't you walk into this like a language and understand what you're trying to say first before you speak a sentence? Understand what you're trying to shoot first before you create an image. Like I say this, every decision in a frame is a word in a sentence, and it's gotta be coherent. We can all just throw light against something and pray and go, yeah. But do you have a point of view? Do you have a style that you're developing? Do you have something that makes people want to look at that image and come back to the rest of your work? Are people connecting with it? Are they just scrolling past it? But I think every time I've seen new photographers grab a camera, go into a workshop, they're spending so much time right after the shot, looking at what they shot, and the puzzling look of, I'm not even sure if this is right. Well, tell me what's right. What are you going for? And when they start working on themselves to develop a point of view and their style of going, no, I think it should look more noir. No, I'm trying to make it look more shadow. You want more contrast. Okay, so how do we get there? What is it going to do? Small light sources, feathering, blah, 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 blah. But when someone goes, I like Rembrandt lighting, yo, shut up. You don't know it. You just are picking a lighting style and going with it. You're not even looking at what you're shooting.
Right. I hear so often from photographers, I only have an hour a day that I can practice. And my reaction is that's a ton. That's an hour that you can do. If it's focused on something, an hour is a ton of time.
If you know what you're trying to do. If you say I'm going to clean my apartment in an hour, you'll clean that apartment in an hour.
Right, yeah.
So
exactly.
Not my apartment. Not my apartment.
Is there a photography skill that you're trying to improve upon actively right now?
Honestly, it sounds crazy because I've been so anti it forever, but I really don't like retouching or editing or whatever. But I will say that the times I'm asked to do it, I'm like, I guess I'll figure this out. And I just have bad habits over the years of doing it the slack-jawed way I can figure it out. And I am kind of curious, is there a genre or a series or a project I would do where I would lean on that for a purpose, for a tool, rather than the people that shoot and then lean on retouching for the end result. So I guess I would say if I have to work on anything, 1,000,000,000%, some sort of post-production type of thing, because I will kill myself at the time of shot for everything. And maybe there's something else I'm not seeing. Maybe I've been a little too close-minded. But color grading, I would absolutely love to expand upon more. I definitely try to see these old film stocks that I was raised on in my head sometimes, and I just can't get there sometimes. And I'm not buying presets. I don't care what YouTuber tries to sling this shit to me.
How do you continue to learn and grow as a photographer?
I think if the second you think you're above it, the second you think you don't have anything left, the second you think you're better than, you are shorting yourself and you are limiting yourself. So I was raised a long time ago from old school photographers. There was no YouTube. You had to assist. You had to research the guys you wanted to emulate or like get better with and go assist them. And one of the first guys I ever assisted said, always be around people that are better than you. You will always want to aspire rather than getting complacent. And it's easy to kind of be around people that are starting out and you've been in it for a while and you're like the elder, keep sharing stuff and you just feel awesome. But I don't want to do that. I don't like feeling like that. I'm so curious about the next chapter of myself and what I can do. And if I look at where I'm at now compared to where I was 25 years ago, I'm like, wow, I never would have thought I would have gotten to this or that result or able to do this shot in 5 minutes or even shoot live demos. Like, It's a what? So I think it's almost scary and sad when people get lazy and don't get humble. I mean, the fact that I get to go eat dinner with Joe McNally and talk about stuff is like still mind blowing to me. And he's just like, gee, heck, Seth, what do you want to do next? Like, it's just wild. And I take honor with these guys even letting me be around them and like think I'm worth sharing. And you used to have to assist for weeks and weeks till they showed you one thing. I try to remember I couldn't be here if I wasn't around people that understood paying it forward in our industry the way it should have always been, as opposed to the guys that held it to the chest and try to sell you a secret later. There is no secrets. We figured this all out. And if you want a future of this industry, you have to pay it forward. And I hope if anything I do in this industry stays after I'm gone, it's that. I want that kid that's coming in now to know that one day they've got to pull it forward.
That is great. Oh my gosh, that's as inspirational as it gets right there. Jeez. Yeah. What did I tell you? Again, one of the least BS people I've ever encountered in my entire life, tells you exactly how it is, and that is so refreshing. So just another side story. That next morning, after we did this interview, the next morning I had went back into the convention center to start chatting again with other photographers, and as I'm walking in there, I see him. There he is, just once again, just walking the halls. That's the sort of thing that happens at imaging. So he stops and we talk for a few minutes and I'm like, where are you off to now? And he's like, I got to grab this thing for Joe McNally. And I was like, like that's got to be wild doing all these things. And he's like, yeah, because he is also an educator and he had a big show that night as well, or not show, a big class that night as well. Several hundred people he was going to be teaching lighting to that evening. And he was like, man, I just can't wait to get it over. And I had said, like, are you nervous? And he's like, no, I don't get nervous. I just hate to just sit around and do nothing. Like, I just want to get it done so that like people can learn and get back to shooting. And I was like, oh, wow. Like that approach I thought was so opposite of what many photographers and other educators are these days, where it's very much like, I'm really excited to have all these people come and see me. He didn't care about any of that. He's like, I don't care how many people like show up. I don't want anybody to be like, that was okay. Yeah, I kind of learned something. He said, I want these people to say, if that was the only class that I came to at imaging, it was worth it. He's just so focused on the amount of value that he wants to give to others. Truly, I have not seen in many other, I was going to say photographers, but just people. I haven't seen that in many other people. He is truly just a really, really genuine guy. And he has a standing invitation to come on the podcast anytime he wants. Truly a great guy. So do yourself a favor, check him out on YouTube. Really great tutorials, fantastic photographer. So next up, we have somebody who is going to be a future friend of the podcast, a future past guest of the show. I cannot wait to have her on and really expand our time here. But it is with photographer Rachael Boer, who shoots weddings and does a really, really good job. The amount of emotion in her work, I'm jealous of. Like, she's able to get emotions out of her work that I could only have dreamed of as a wedding photographer. And that speaks a lot to who she is and how she's able to make the people who she's talking to feel just so comfortable. And that right there is a huge skill in the world of photography. So sometimes more than the knowing your camera settings, knowing your light, it's getting people to feel comfortable in front of your camera. And Rachael does a great job with that. And because of that, she's able to get wonderful, wonderfully emotive photographs that her clients love. So with that, let's go ahead and hear what Rachael has to say.
My name is Rachael Boer. I have been in the photography space for about 15 years. I run Rachael Boer Photography, which is my wedding and portrait brand. I also do education, so I have online courses and an academy, and that's over at rachelboer.com. And this past year, I also started a third business, which is called Market Noodle, and we do done-for-you marketing services for photographers and other small businesses.
Oh my gosh. If I thought photography in and of itself was a very busy profession, but here you are just showing everybody up. In the time that you've been shooting, right, we all run into creative ruts every once in a while. How do you get out of yours?
We definitely do. And I think one thing that's important I've heard other people say this, but it is really something that when I take the time to do it, I realize how powerful it is to occasionally get out of your comfort zone and photograph something you would never typically photograph. So I did this recently. I was doing an engagement session and it was kind of raining. We were downtown and we got the images we needed. But after we were done, I said to the couple, okay, we're good. And, we kind of let them go home. And then I was like, I'm going to stay back for a while. And I took some time to photograph like the puddles and the reflection of the buildings in the puddles. Because I just thought it looked so cool on this rainy day. That's not something I would typically photograph. I don't go around looking at the ground, right? I typically work with people. That's all I photograph really is portraits and weddings. So I'm mostly photographing faces all day. But just taking some time to do a creative project where I was just having fun with it and just getting some unique angles and lighting and perspective and just playing with the water, that was really motivating for me and really like kind of fed my soul. And am I going to do anything with those photos? No, probably not.
Right.
Probably they'll never see the light of day.
Yeah.
But it just kind of brought that spark back and it gave me kind of a rush of energy and excitement around photographing again. And I think I have to do that periodically or else it can get a little bit stale or a little bit, you get in that rut, like you said.
Of course. Do you have like a list on your phone of projects that you want to try?
But that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't. That's a great idea.
You were just out and you're like, these puddles look great.
Yes, just whatever catches your eye, and if it's architecture or food or even if you're not good at it. Like I said, those photos aren't great and I'll probably never do anything with them, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to bring photography back to fun when you've been working so hard at it and it's almost become more of a chore.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I found shooting weddings that it can very much be like that. It can it can be very formulaic,
yes.
right? And you can tell the couple to do the exact same thing over and over again. And even though the photos look different because it's a different couple, it's a different scene, it's a different light, as a photographer, you do got to find ways to mix it up a little bit.
Absolutely.
So I get that.
Yeah.
When it comes to photographing people, weddings, typically weddings I have found is can be easier than most in terms of capturing emotion in a photo because they're already happy. They're already having a great time.
Hopefully.
Most days. But for things like, say, engagement sessions, when you're working with people, what tips do you have for capturing emotion in a photograph?
I do find that most people come to a session very nervous and anxious, and I would too. It's uncomfortable being in front of the camera. If you whipped out a camera right now, I would get weird because, what do I do with my hands? What do I look, right? It's uncomfortable. And so I think the first thing we need to do is bring a really confident, positive energy to the session because once they feel like we are in control and we know what we're doing, they can relax and let their guard down. So I always let them know, I don't expect you to be a model today. I don't expect you to know how to pose or what to do with your hands. I'm going to tell you every step of the way what you need to do. So you can just relax and enjoy it. Think of this like a date, if it's a couple. And then right away, I have them start with some poses that are they have more movement to them. So more dynamic. So I don't want to start with them sitting, looking at the camera and smiling at me. That's going to make it feel very JCPenney right off the bat. And they're uncomfortable and their smile's not going to look genuine. So I start with something like walking. Okay, you start on the other side of the field. I want you to hold hands and walk towards me. The only rule is you can't look at me. You can look at each other. You can look around, look at look at the sky. I don't care. Don't look at me. And so I just have them start with something where there's very little pressure. Typically they're kind of further away from the camera. So they're not feeling like there's a lens right up in their face,
Right, yeah.
And then as they get comfortable with that, we might do something else that involves some movement. Okay, spin her around. Okay, dip her. Why don't you give her a kiss? Anything that I can do to kind of get them engaging and interacting together and then bringing in some movement to the photograph. And then we'll usually end with the stuff that's more posed because by that point they're more comfortable. And so it's going to look better.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. You always want people to look their best, obviously.
Yeah.
And as you said, I know, like from experience, how difficult it can be to get people to feel comfortable in front of the camera, especially for a couple some couples, are hiring a wedding photographer because they know that they're getting married and that they need a wedding photographer. And the dude isn't always the most excited to be a part of it. And,
yes.
you gotta help out in some way that you can as a photographer. So that's a great tip.
Yeah.
What about the process of photography makes you feel most creatively fulfilled?
Ooh, these are great questions.
Thank you.
Well done. I think that the answer that comes to mind first is just trying to capture the light and the spirit that I see inside each person that is unique to them. Like you said, a lot of times we get into kind of a rut where we've done 50 weddings this year. A bride is a bride, and it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to pose her in the same way as I posed the last one. And I know I'm going to get a good photo, but is that the pose that's really going to bring out her best features? Is that the thing that's really going to make her look like her and bring out like her personality and the sparkle that she has? So trying to kind of be almost like a fresh slate every time I approach a session. I'm not just going to do what I've done before, even though I know it looks good. I know it will sell. I know they'll be happy. But can I challenge myself to do something a little different, something a little creative based on what I'm getting from them, based on kind of their energy or what's unique to them? Some people are very mellow and chill. And so the way I pose that person is going to be very different than how I would pose my sister, who's the most extroverted person in the world. And I want to be sensitive to that kind of shift in dynamic with each client that I work with. So I'd say that's creatively fulfilling.
Do you just like get a feeling from them? Like how do you know how far they're willing to take it and how far you're willing to take it?
That's a good question. I think I've not been trained on this, but I think naturally I enjoy kind of reading people's body language and trying to be very sensitive and empathetic to the reaction I'm getting. And so if I ask them to do something, I can tell pretty quickly whether they're like, oh yeah, and they're all in, or whether like, okay, I can try it. And okay, so that's not the direction. Then they're not feeling it. Yeah. And so sometimes I will. I'll start a process or start a pose, and then I'll say, yeah, that's not really quite feeling right. Let's go over here instead. And so I'll just like kind of abort if I need to and say, that doesn't fit you. It doesn't feel right. And they're okay with that. I don't think that makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. I think it just makes you look like you're sensitive and you're empathetic and you're reading their cues and then adjusting if needed.
Perfect. When we're shooting a wedding, the emotion is very important.
Yeah.
When we come to a conference like this, the technical is very important, right? There's a lot of weight put on that. How do you balance the two? And what's more important to you?
Yeah, without a doubt, the emotional is more important to me. I will deliver an image that's a little bit less than technically perfect. Maybe it's a little soft. Maybe my lighting isn't like totally optimal because we were in some hotel ballroom and, you get what you get. But the bride's mom is in tears or, whatever, the flower girl does something funny. And those are moments that I know my clients want to have. And I'm thrilled to capture those, even more so than like a technically perfect image that's really boring, So, of course, for competition or if you're, trying to impress other photographers, you're looking for the images that are like absolutely perfectly sharp and perfectly composed. But the reality is we're working with human beings and they're messy and they're not perfect. And if you're doing weddings, you're working in a dynamic environment that is changing every second in an atmosphere where you don't have control over almost any element. And so it's going to be a different outcome. And I think you just have to kind of embrace that and say, I'm here to kind of capture what happens today, whatever that is. I'm here to capture it as beautifully and authentically as I can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And taking that pressure off yourself will help. If you're working in the studio and you have time to set up every light and get it just so fantastic, do that. But if you're doing something where you're on the fly or even in a portrait session, I might have everything planned down to a T, but then we get there and the weather changes or the light changes, the sun goes behind a cloud. All of a sudden my perfect plan isn't working, so I have to adjust. Yeah. Then that's kind of fun if you embrace it.
Yeah, if you embrace it. Yeah, that's a hard thing, is to show up without the expectation of exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. Like I showed up here like so excited to go on like sunny photo walks and like all this stuff outside. It's just been overcast and rainy and cloudy.
I know. I was talking to a local. He said, it's kind of dingy out there. I was like, that's a great word.
It's about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Do you enter many photos into print competitions here?
I don't. I've done it a little bit in the past. Truth be told, it's not something I've made a priority. Sure. I probably should do it more. But, I've got my 3 businesses, 5 kids. I'm a little maxed out. So
course.
For me, it hasn't been something I've done a lot of. But I love it. And I love watching competition. I love looking at the images. I still learn watching other people enter,
Yeah. No, I guess what I was going to try to explore a little bit more is that you talked about the photos that you might deliver to a client are going to be mostly emotionally driven, right?
I think so.
But then photos that you would enter into a competition would be more technically proficient.
Yes.
So I guess trying to figure out how do you like organize those? How do you plan for those? Things like that. But
yeah, and I think I have entered competitions some, and the very first time I entered, I chose 4 images that I thought were really powerful because of the emotion behind them. And when I went and saw them judged, I realized the emotion is important, but it doesn't outweigh some of the technical flaws. And so that was a good lesson for me to realize they didn't score very well because the judges immediately saw this lighting mistake, this posing mistake. And so I thought, okay, if I was going to do this again and really wanted to do well in competition, I would probably challenge myself to create images for competition. And I would say, I'm going to have a vision. I'm going to go get models. I'm going to figure out the optimal situation. I'm going to create something that I'm really proud of technically. That would be a great exercise too, because we want to push ourselves to grow with technique. But every day when I'm working with clients, I can't be also trying to create competition-worthy images. I need to be really focused on what does this client need and want.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So
And
it's a bit
that's
of a different project.
Yep.
Right?
I gotcha. Where do you think photographers spend too much of their time obsessing over?
Editing.
Editing, really?
I think probably. I've mentored for a long time. I've mentored photographers for over a decade. And I think the number one trap that I see photographers fall into at every level, from amateur all the way up to advanced, is over perfectionism sort of in their editing process. It can be a trap for some people. I think if your temperament tends to be a little bit more perfectionistic, and a lot of times you enjoy sitting there on your computer, tweaking and playing with and adjusting endlessly, you kind of lose sight of the fact that the client probably can't see all those minute changes you're making, right? If you were to put in front of them an image that you spent 15 minutes editing and one that you spent 2 hours editing, I'm not convinced they could tell the difference, because their eyes are not trained and tuned like ours are. They would just see their baby or their husband or whatever, and they would be thrilled by either image. So I think if your goal is to, if you're doing it for fun, for the joy of it, by all means, lean into that, knock yourself out. If you're doing it to make a profitable business out of it, you have to get through clients. You got to move on to the next client. So I think deciding where that line is of like good enough, not in the sense that you're going to put out bad work, but you don't need to over obsess about it.
Right.
I think that can help you become more profitable more quickly.
It's like a Civic will still get you to the grocery store in the same way that a Ferrari will.
Exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha.
That's a good point.
So then can you finish the sentence for me? New photographers should...
Boy, these are tough. I mean, they're good, but I could think for an hour on that. New photographers...
But what's good enough of an answer?
Yeah, great question. Should never stop learning, I would say. And I think most new photographers are wonderful about this. They are eager to learn. They're always taking in information. I remember when I was new, I went to the library and I took out every book on photography and on business, and I read them all. And then I went to the next library, one town over, I did the same thing. Went to Barnes & Noble, read all the books. You know, so I had that insatiable appetite for learning at the beginning. And I think as you get further in, you lose that a little bit, because you get a little bogged down with, I have all these clients now and I have this backlog of editing and everything, and you stop learning. Obviously, if you come to a conference like this, it's a wonderful opportunity to recharge and learn again. But throughout the year, are we doing that with the same kind of hunger? And I think we need to be, no matter our level. And when you're first starting out, it's the ideal time, because you don't maybe have a backlog of clients to deal with. You've got time to sink in and decide, what do I really love? Is it landscapes? Is it people? Is it pets? Whatever avenue I want to traverse here and learn about, I'm going to lean in and learn from the best people that I can. And there's a lot of great education online. You don't have to go to a conference.
Of course,
But if you can, I mean, it's wonderful.
Energetic.
Yeah.
It's so fun, yeah.
It is.
That is really interesting. I was the same way when I had got started, because I was so excited to just learn everything that I could.
Yes.
But I think the trap perhaps that I fell in, and maybe others do as well, is that like once you do start working with clients, you feel like now you're learning in a different sense, because now you're getting behind the camera experience.
Yep.
And then you can just get lazy on learning all the other stuff, I suppose. So that's good. Pay attention and push yourself and continue learning outside of that.
That's great.
Is there a photography skill that you are currently working on yourself to improve?
Yeah. I'm always working to improve my studio work these days, because I've spent most of my career doing either on-location stuff, weddings, outdoor portraits, that kind of thing. And right now I've got a studio space, and I've merged with another photographer who does primarily headshots and corporate work. And I'm going to be working a lot more with her in the studio. And she's better than me at studio lighting. And so I'm like, this is great. This is my opportunity to sharpen my skills. I'm going to learn from her, follow her, and watch how she does it. And I'm excited about that, because I think it's going to give me just more opportunities. If I get a call for a corporate job at a lawyer's office and there's 40 lawyers, I'm going to feel more comfortable taking that with some more advanced lighting skills. So yeah, I'm excited. I think it's always good to be pushing yourself in at least one area. I know I'm good at the on-location stuff. And if you said, Rachel, there's a wedding, come shoot it right now, I could do that without a second thought. But if you said, we have these corporate clients, can you do this on the spot? I'd have to think a little bit harder. And I want to get to the point where that feels automatic as well.
That's great. This is my last question for you. What is your favorite part about attending a conference like Imaging USA?
Oh my gosh. I find the photography business to be a little bit isolating. It can be lonely. It can be hard if you feel like you're making these decisions, these big decisions, all by yourself every day, and you don't have an echo chamber. You don't have anyone to talk to about it. And it's a little bit lonely. So I find these conferences to be really just motivating, inspiring, and refreshing. Talking to people who live this life every day. No one in my daily life understands when I talk about shooting a wedding or whatever, that, you know, they haven't experienced it. But I come here and everybody's experienced these things. So yeah, it really is just really refreshing for the soul. And of course, you pick up so many things. You learn so many things you weren't expecting to learn. I've gone to classes here that I thought, I don't know if I really need this topic or want this topic, but then I end up just sitting there enraptured the whole time. Like, this is exactly what I needed to hear, and I didn't even know it.
Wow.
So I think, like, I love, that's not what you asked, but I love coming here and going to classes that don't instantly appeal to me. You know, like a sports photography class. I don't do sports photography, but when I sit there, I inevitably learn something that is really cool out of the box. I would not have encountered it if I just went to the wedding classes that I'm used to. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
So I think pushing yourself outside your limits is also a great opportunity at a place like this.
Yeah. Rachel, thank you so much for your time. Where can listeners find you online?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So rachaelboer.com is where you can find all my educational stuff, instructional videos, the academy, all that. And then over at marketnoodle.com, if anyone needs help with their marketing, we handle things like social media, blogging, email marketing, stuff that photographers don't necessarily want to do themselves. We'll do it for you. So that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, Rachel's another one of those people who is just like crazy busy. Crazy busier than I honestly ever want to be. I'm so glad that there's people in the world like her. And when she's got it going on, like I had just looked at the website for Market Noodle and this done-for-you marketing for photographers. It looks really, really interesting, and it looks like a great idea. I mean, for myself as a photographer, like the thing that I loved was going out and shooting. The thing that I liked the least was the marketing aspect of it, because I'd always second guess myself. If it didn't work, I didn't know why. If it did work, I didn't know why, so I couldn't like really replicate it. But to have somebody who does know that world, and to have somebody who you can reach out to ensure that they'd be able to help, as well as explain maybe why things worked or why they didn't work, is something that I see a lot of value in. So again, I'm excited to have her on the podcast in the coming months, and we'll probably talk more about marketing and figuring out for you as a photographer how you can just get started with some of this stuff. So it was such a blast talking with Rachel. So next up here, we have another future friend of the podcast, future past guest. His name is Carl Caylor, and Carl is a portrait photographer who, before you listen to this interview, I want you to press pause real quick and just go to his website. There's a link in the show notes of this episode, or check him out on Instagram and just check out his work for a minute. It's next level. It's not the oversaturated, over-edited look on Instagram that is very attention grabbing. There's like this elegance, there's this softness, there's this realism that goes into his work that doesn't rely on just like giant happy smiles. It doesn't rely on, again, the oversaturation, the action, the overbaked edits. It just feels real. It feels genuine, but at the same time feels beautiful enough to where it stands out on its own. It doesn't feel like this is just natural. This is what I see every day. There's an element of realism to it, but at the same time, it is very much just wrapped in this perfect package of life is art. It's very hard to explain. I'm not very good with words. That's why I picked up a camera and not a pencil. But I encourage you to look at it for yourself. So again, his link is going to be in the show notes. Check it out. And then when you're done looking at his work and drooling over his work, then you can come back and listen to this quick little interview with Carl Caylor.
I'm Carl Caylor. I create for portraits, mostly for children, high school seniors, families, but I also take on commercial work, products, corporate events, headshots, and things of that nature as well.
How long have you been doing it?
Oh, a long time. 1992, professionally.
So in that time, it's a number of years, I'm sure that you've been through a creative rut or two. How do you get out of those?
Out of creative ruts. Ignore the problem. It'll go away. Turn the radio on louder. It's just like being in the car and having a noise that you don't know what it is. Turn up the radio more. Yeah, get away from it a little bit and then come back later.
How do you get away from it? Like, what do you do?
Music, movies.
You live up in Michigan, right? You do a lot of outdoor stuff?
Outdoor stuff. Sit up in a tree and, go fishing. Just be outside for a while. But I also like movies. That helps reset things. Get ideas and inspiration. Music, of course, always does that. And then, of course, events like we're at right now at Imaging USA, where you can rub elbows with people that think kind of like you do. And again, it's inspiring and eye-opening all at the same time, and it kind of gets you out of a rut sometimes.
So don't push through it, just maybe distract yourself until you're ready to come back?
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. Working with people in portraiture, there's a big emphasis on emotion in photos. Do you have any tips for capturing emotion in a photograph?
Yeah, let people be themselves.
How do you do that?
Part of my big philosophy is portraits or any kind of photography, you need two main ingredients, very, very important. You need a good background with depth and dimension, and then you need good quality of light at the same time, same place. And when those two things exist together, then somebody, in my case, because I'm photographing people, can enter that scene and exist. And then I photograph them. That way we don't have to orchestrate or pose to death, because the lighting is already good, the background is already good, you already have the potential for composition, and they can be themselves.
New photographers oftentimes, why do you think that they struggle so much then with getting emotions out of photos?
Well, there's a lot to think about in photography, especially with portraits, because we got to think of the math of it, the f-stops and shutter speeds, and oh my goodness, and ISOs, and which dial does which, and then of course okay, how do we pose somebody that makes them looks good, and then of course all the scene, and is there somebody coming out of their head, and pretty soon all those things are rambling out of our head, and we go, bleh, it comes out, because there is a lot to think about. So
you didn't even touch upon focus there.
No, that's 101, right? Yeah. So, but there's all those technical things and artistic things, and in portrait work, there's also the psychology things, you know. So I think it's like any other muscle memory type of thing. Athletics, you practice. Why? Because then you overcome all those little obstacles so you can concentrate on the more important ones. Like a camera, we were always told when I started, that camera is like an extension of your hand, an extension of your heart, extension of your eyes, and the more you know about it and don't have to think about what you're doing with your camera, the more you can communicate and create with the person in front of you.
I see. So learn the tool, and now you can focus on working with the person in front of you. That's good.
Indeed.
What about the photographic process, or what within that makes you feel most creative?
Being able to print my own work.
Really?
Yes.
Printing your own work, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the old game of telephone. You know, you sit in a circle and you tell something to somebody next to you, and it goes around the circle, it comes back, and it's never what you started off with.
Really?
But so I was a darkroom technician first, way back when, and worked for some pretty high-end labs, and got to see a lot of really, really, really good work from talented individuals across the country, and it kind of sank in. But by being able to have that part of the process in your complete and total control as well really does help. So that way when you're photographing, you're creating, you know what you're creating for in your end product. You're starting with the foundation that you already know where you're going to.
I see. So with that telephone example, are you saying that you're every person in that game of telephone if you're printing the photo?
I am. That being said,
that makes it easier.
You know, printing isn't for everybody, so I will say that. But I think the biggest thing to understand is that you are in control. You are the artist, and you just need to justify what you are doing before you press that button. So is there right or wrong? Sometimes there is, but this is art too, and it's subjective. As you're looking through your viewfinder and you say to yourself, would I have painted this person here? Would I have painted them in this pose? Would I have painted that kind of light on them? And if the answer is no to any of those, then maybe you might want to change it before you press the button.
I see.
Justify it, yeah. I
know that's hard for beginners because you got to know what it is that you want to say to be able to justify something.
There's a lot to think about, and then that comes out. So.
With, like I said, portrait work, emotion is a big part of that.
Yes.
But coming to an event like PPA, there's a big weight on the technical of an image as well. So
there's both.
How do you see that balance when you're shooting?
I think the emotion is more important by far. I'm a very technical person as far as the photographic work is concerned, but it should be understood. So that what makes an image powerful and more meaningful to your guest or people that are viewing it is the fact that it should be telling a story and it should have emotion. And so everything that we're doing in that image or portraying that image should tell that same emotion. So for example, lighting. Okay, everyone just thinks, oh, we'll just put light here, 45 and 45, and it's exposed correctly, good. They smile. But no, some light forms on a face aren't for smiles. That's the psychology of it all. So if your face is going more in shadow, you shouldn't be smiling there because smiling out of a shadow is kind of creepy, you know? So a face that's lit is a happy face. You smile then. If it's split light, that's more intense. And Rembrandt light is more intense as well, but more theatrically intense, if there's such a word.
Sure.
So there's a meaning. Again, everything is done for a purpose, and you're justifying that as you're telling your story, as you're drawing out the emotion of your subject.
Well, this isn't in this list of questions here, but how do you find your purpose? Because that's obviously very important to you. You've done it. How do you do it?
My purpose was very simple. I was going to be a photojournalist when I started this whole journey from the yearbook work, and I thought, this is cool, we're photographing student life, and I'm going to do this someday with National Geographic, and travel around the world, and this is going to be great. But for a lot of reasons, I just didn't work out, and I decided that it was more of I needed to be more surgically thought process in portrait. But I still, in my mind, want to tell people stories. And in my mind, the reason I really got into portrait work is because while working in the lab, we did a lot of restorations. And I saw that we were missing a lot of family history. We weren't recording enough family history, in my opinion. I said, I want to be a part of that.
Wow.
And so that's my big thing. That's why I still want to photograph families. I still want to photograph seniors. I want to photograph the tweens and the newborns. But most importantly, I want to photograph that same newborn growing up.
Different stages.
Families several times throughout their career, their senior portraits, their wedding, and so on and so forth, the whole gamut of the life cycle.
That is great. That is great. Have something to connect to. I love that. Mm-hmm. What do you think new photographers spend too much time obsessing over?
Obsessing with? There's a lot to think about, like we kind of said. Pick one thing and learn it first, and then move on. And pick another thing and learn it well. It's kind of like back in the wrestling program. You drill things. You learn a new move, and you drill and drill and drill and drill and repeat. And then you move on to something else that might be connected to that, but a nice advanced level of it. So, for example, if you want to learn, let's learn exposure first and focus. Focus and exposure. Go to the beach. Photograph seagulls flying around, not on autofocus, on manual focus, and learn how to follow things and expose as the light is changing. And take that camera and put it on your pillow at night, and if you wake up because you can't sleep, play with your camera. So, like I said, so that becomes an extension. Once that's all set, then move on to maybe lighting and creating shape and form and texture. And once you somewhat get more comfortable with that, then start looking into facial analysis and how that light is going to best serve that person because of their unique features and so on and so forth. And then start diving into color palettes and color theory and composition studies. And there's, like I said, there's so much to do to try to do it all at once. It's just, your head's going to spin off.
Of course.
So take it little steps at a time.
And that was a roadmap right there.
It's a roadmap.
That was a roadmap. That was great. That was wonderful. Are there any skills in photography that you're actively trying to improve upon yourself?
Absolutely. More compositing, blending of composites. AI is here, dude, and if you don't embrace it, we're going to be passed by in our industry again. So trying to connect with that as much as possible and understand how I might be able to use that in my work and for the guests that come through my doors. It's the new age, so
it's hard. We got to get ready for that wave. We just got to ride
ready.
It for
it's
sure.
Here, so we got to dive in head first. And if it's too deep, we grab a snorkel because we're there swimming.
Is there a marketing strategy that's been working particularly well for you recently?
Yeah, my dog.
Your dog?
Yep. Bring my dog to the studio every day, and she's up in the front window, and people stop by to pet her. And
no kidding.
It's how stupid is that, right?
Wow.
For as many things as we try to do with actual physical mailers and social media advertising and connecting groups with the chamber and all that, my dog is the best.
That is hilarious. That is awesome. You better feed that dog real well every night.
She's spoiled. She is spoiled, yeah.
For events like this, Imaging USA, there's a lot of people here. What's your favorite part about attending a conference like this?
You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been in every state except for Alaska giving programs, and I know people from all those states, but you don't get to see them all the time.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing for another roadmap for beginners is that we all need to understand as photographers, we see things differently than most people. We see things differently than your family, than your spouse. Not that it's bad or anything, it's just that's the way we are. And we've all heard it before. Hey, you have a good eye, you should be a photographer, right? You've heard that?
Of course.
And it's because it's true. I mean, that's the way God made us. We just see things with depth and dimension and perspective. But what we do need to understand is that not everybody does see things that way. And so you talk about the rut that you're asking about in the beginning. A lot of times that happens because the people you're around throughout the year, all the time, every day, aren't on the same mindset that we are. And so coming here and connecting with 10,000 people that are thinking and seeing things the way we do, that's huge.
Wow. I don't think I've ever thought about it like that. Like, yeah, absolutely. You hear from everybody here, like, it's such kind of a lonely profession.
Yeah.
So coming here, like, it's great to connect with people, but as you said, like, just being able to be around people who have that same mindset, who do see the same as you, it is really creatively energizing, I guess is the best way to put it.
And you can't get that online. I mean, you can't get that virtually.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but you just can't. You know, just looking across here now, even though we're not talking to these people walking by, just seeing them walk through here, it's like, these are people just like me.
Of course.
This is cool.
Well, Carl, that was my last question for you. Tell me where listeners can find you online.
My website is photoimagesbycarl.net, and Facebook, I'm just Carl Caylor.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carl.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Truly a great guy. Really enjoyed talking with Carl. His insights as far as the posing, the getting out of a creative rut. It seems like we're often looking for like these little hacks. Like, ooh, if you're feeling out of a creative rut, just do these 2 things and then you're good to go. But he broke it down again in such a way that was just like, oh, that's very common sense. That makes sense. Maybe I'm just trying to push this thing. Maybe I'm trying to rush this thing. Maybe that's the world that we all kind of live in. And to hear his take on like, no, man, maybe you just got to slow it down. Maybe you just got a dog that's got to sit in the window. That's how you're going to get in front of clients. I loved it. So again, I'm really excited to have Carl on the podcast here in the future. And I know that you're going to be excited to hear that chat as well. So that is it for this episode. And again, this kind of wraps up the whole Imaging USA experience as far as these interviews go. I truly can't say enough great things about attending Imaging USA. And I'm going to give you some insight for myself. I wasn't planning on doing this, but whatever. I've heard a lot of people say that they're very much like an extroverted introvert, meaning that like as a person, they're an introvert, but like at times they can be out there and they can network with people and talk with them and be fine. And I very much feel like that is me as well. The way that I recharge my batteries is not being around a million other people. It's having time to myself and slowing down. So going to an event like this with 10,000 other people, it can feel very overwhelming. It can feel like both this is a great opportunity that you can take advantage of and do all these great things, but also at the same time, you can plan to do nothing and then just have a lot of things unfold in front of you. And the way that I approached it this year is that I actually didn't attend any classes. And not because there wasn't any of value. There were tons of great classes that I would have loved to have sat in on, but I knew that I wanted to meet with lots of past guests of the show, meet with new photography friends, even meet with listeners of the podcast. Y'all know who you are. And to do that, I wanted to bring my best self. So I had to tell myself before I showed up, hey, it's okay to go in, see the sights, connect with some people, and then you can go back to your room and take a half-hour-long nap. That is okay. You don't have to feel bad for not being at the convention every second and then turning into the worst version of yourself. And that's what I did. When I would connect with past guests of the show, when I would connect with people, I wanted to be my best version of the self, and I was able to do that because I also told myself that it was okay, that I could chill and recharge my batteries back in the hotel room. And honestly, I had a better time this time going to imaging than I did back in 2020, where I tried to go to all the classes, be at the expo center the whole time, meet with as many photographers as possible. I was so drained at the end of every day that the next morning I'd wake up and be like, oh, we got to do it all over again. It was a lot of energy. So if you are the kind of person who maybe you don't recharge your batteries by being around a billion other people, I still encourage you to go to an event like this. Because even if you're not talking with these other photographers, maybe in the same way that I did, interviewing them, when you're there, you feel connected to all of them because you know that they're all going through similar things that you are. You're all experiencing similar things. You all see the world in a very similar way. And there's just a kinship there that lets you know, like, you belong. You're in the right place. You got this. And you're going to be able to bring that energy back home from the conference. So if you haven't been before, I truly, truly, truly encourage you to go. And if you're just one of those freak, super extroverted type people, like Rachel, she said she was, then this is the place where you're going to recharge your batteries like never before, because there's no way that you can talk to all 10,000 photographers who show up, but you can try your best. But the point is, whether you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert, this is the place for you. I promise you. So check it out. Check it out next year. That is it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed this series of interviews. And remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.